Welcome everyone, Costin here with my campaign overview guide for Kholek Suneater in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Kholek is probably the third strongest legendary lord of the Warriors of Chaos. Maybe the fourth strongest, maybe Valkia could be considered better. Though Kholek being an undivided Chaos legendary lord, he does have some significant advantages with the gifts of Chaos. But let's talk about the Warriors of Chaos just a bit, just to go over some details. They have some very significant advantages. In the way they recruit units, they have a recruitment pool when it comes to warband recruitment. They can also get gifted units through the gifts of Chaos, so they can get demonic units, artillery units in particular, Dragon Ogre, Shaggoths, Dragon Ogres as a general rule. But it can be slow recruitment, and you do generally have to level up your units. Like for instance here, if I want to get chosen with grey weapons, I need to get these guys to rank 7. They're already rank 6, so that's pretty close enough. And it depends on the region you're in. It depends on the corruption of the region. It might even depend on the legendary lord. Kholek does have certain advantages when it comes to recruiting certain types of units in his campaign. Another thing to mention about the Warriors of Chaos is the way their settlements work. They can hold minor settlements, but they won't really gain all that much from them. The settlements they want to hold are the Dark Fortresses. Dark Fortresses are very powerful strategic forts that can have very powerful garrisons, generate a good amount of income, which also has benefit. Their main economic building has a benefit of increasing their income from sacking settlements. In the previous video talking about Grimgore, I talked about the raiding stashes. Well, the Warriors of Chaos get a version of that too, though it's combined with just generating a huge amount of income. They also have a building in the Chaos Shrine that increases the amount of income they earn from buildings up to 50%. And then they have other building benefits as well, in terms of recruitment cost, in terms of warband upgrade costs, corruption benefits. The main knight building will also increase the income from all buildings. So you can generate a huge amount of income from Dark Fortresses. On top of that, Dark Fortresses are heavily fortified settlements that, with their powerful garrisons, are going to be a very unattractive target for the AI to go for. So Warriors of Chaos can go on a rampage across the campaign map with their core territory not being threatened. I can count on one hand how many times the Dark Fortress, especially my main Dark Fortress, when playing a Warriors of Chaos campaign, has actually been seriously threatened. Attacked, it happens, but seriously threatened, and as in it could fall, very, very rarely. And only really in situations where I had just literally taken it and the garrison hadn't had time to replenish. But the garrison of any Dark Fortress can hold back a huge army, a fairly substantial army. And if you recruit a lord, for instance, in a Chaos Fortress, let's say I recruit a lord here, let's go with one there. And I can just get a bunch of units over here to defend the fortress. So being able to do that in your core territory will give you significant defensive advantages in your campaign. Then, with Undivided Lords, you do get some very significant benefits when it comes to Gifts of Chaos. Though it will take some time to unlock the benefits of the other gods. So, be it Slaanesh, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Khorne. It is going to take some time in the course of your campaign to be able to unlock that. I'm on my way of doing it, but it's still going to take 6 turns to unlock it with Khorne, for instance, in this campaign. The gifts that I'd focus on would be Slaanesh can give you some fairly nice gifts, Nurgle can give you some substantial growth, Khorne can give you some nice post-battle loot, and Tzeentch is generally not worth bothering with, sadly enough. But that's how things stand with the Warriors of Chaos as a general rule. Now let's talk about Kholek and his campaign situation. Kholek is a monster on the battlefield. He is a one-man doomstack. Though he's not as powerful as the proper one-man doomstacks, he can absolutely do a significant amount of damage in any single battle. He gets one extra gift of Chaos Undivided because he is a Chaos Undivided Lord, so he'll start with an extra gift over here, and he can get up to 4. His Dark Fortress settlement buildings can grant you additional Dragon Ogre Warband recruitment capacity, which if I look over here, for instance, with this army, I don't have enough money right now, but I can get a Dragon Ogre unit over here for this particular army. And he gets empowered by worship. For every vassal he has, he gets 5% strength, mass, and armor for each vassal. Like, each vassal gives him that. At the moment in this campaign, and I don't have necessarily the highest amount of vassals, but at the moment, he's got 188 armor and 1.1k weapon strength, which, most of which is going to be armor-piercing damage. And he also has a huge amount of mass. So Kholek is an absolute wrecking ball. When we're looking at his special skill tree, he does get an AoE ability. It's not really too powerful. He does get Bestial Rage for Bestial Rage, which gives Tempest Rage for Kholek, and then Storm Rage for Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, so it matches well with his army. He gets Hearts of Iron, so Vigor Loss Reduction for his own units. And then his special skill line, more unit mass, weapon strength during siege battles. He can tear down the walls, if you will. I don't think he can tear down the walls, but he can certainly tear down the gates, can't he? Armor, spell resistance, more benefits in battle, dazed when he comes into contact with units, charge bonus for those Dragon Ogres, campaign movement range, campaign replenishment, the attribute Demonic, and enemy leadership -8. On top of that, his Lord effects, he gets Carnage Incarnate as the Gift of Chaos, -25% upkeep for Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, and 10% missile resistance for Chaos Monstrous Infantry and Monster units. So one of the things you can do as Kholek, you don't necessarily need to play him with an infantry army here. You can get a full-on monster army for him, though that can be a bit tricky getting those units to recruit, but certainly is a viable option in his campaign. And he can get access to Carnage Incarnate gives you Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, though he does have a limit of 6 gifted units. We also need to mention that he starts with 2 Dragon Ogres, he starts with 2 Chaos Trolls, and he can get a Hell Cannon, since he is a Chaos Lord of Chaos Undivided, and once he reaches rank 2, he can get the Summoners of Rage. So he has a powerful Regiment of Renown, Hell Cannon, Chaos Trolls, which you can very early on convert into Armored Chaos Trolls, which have a significantly higher survivability because of the armor. And with those 2 Dragon Ogres, you are capable of sweeping aside any kind of resistance. With that in mind, let's talk about his game plan. He will start over here, by the Challenge Stone. There's going to be an Ogre army initially. Like, you start on the field, you start a raid against an Ogre army, then there's an Ogre garrison. You easily take it. What do you do then? Well, you could head east, go to the Valerie, deal with the Ogres completely, then start heading into Cafe. But here's a little trick that I'll give you when you're playing as Kholek, because I used it during the course of this campaign. In Saber Mounter, Grimgor starts. Now, Grimgor is one of the strongest legendary lords in the game. He will steamroll everyone in his path. But as the Warriors of Chaos, you can force vassalization on factions. If you hurry from the challenge stones, you take it, you replenish, you get some units, get the Regiment of Renown. But if you hurry from the challenge stone, ignoring the minor greenskin faction that sits in Ice Spewer, and head to Saber Mountain, you can engage Grimgor's army and force vassalization on him. You have a more powerful army than he does. And you might also get in the situation where Grimgor is going to start building up a massive stack of troops. And once he does that, once he's finished doing that, or while he's in the process of doing that, he's going to get another army, which will be outside the fortress. Now, since he has a lot of units between the garrison and his main army, he will actually pick a fight with you outside the fortress walls, thus negating his defensive advantage. And you beat the crap out of him. If you can out-resolve that battle without losing too many units, hell, if you're playing on Legendary, you might want to set the battle difficulty to easy just for that one, just to trivialize the encounter. But if you have to fight them manually, likely some units will fall back into Saber Mountain and you'll have to siege it. But regardless, it is a battle you can win. And then you can force vassalization on Grimgor, provided he hasn't taken any other settlements. And you can move fast enough to prevent him, because the AI is going to be a bit slow to actually go on an expansion path. What the AI does is it defeats the army next to it. If there's a settlement right next to it and they don't have a settlement, they'll attack it. But then they'll spend some turns building up a force. That's the time that you're going to use to take out Grimgor and vassalize him. And once he's vassalized, you just let him loose. Because Grimgor, even though he's a vassal, is still Grimgor. So you start declaring wars on the ogre factions. Like, look at the situation. Most of the Mountains of Morn are controlled by Grimgor at this particular stage. Or a substantial portion, half of them, are controlled by Grimgor. Grimgor himself is way over here fighting the vampire counts. What you do after that is, once you've vassalized Grimgor, you might want to take the granite spikes from the minor greenskin faction, maybe vassalize them as well if you can manage it. I failed to do so. Then go take the Valerie, vassalize the ogres. I did that. They ended up losing the Valerie because of chaos corruption and causing a rebellion, so it might be ideal if the ogres actually managed to get another settlement. But this is the minor ogre faction you start at war with. And you start declaring war on the various minor ogre factions in the Mountains of Morn. In some ideal scenario, it would be best if you could fight them yourself, so you could force vassalization on them. But Grimgor taking their territory is just as good. So Grimgor will start carving up a massive empire for himself. Like, look at this situation. He's got 3 stacks of troops. Not full ones, but 2 full stacks of troops, almost. Another one that's very close to full. And then he has a 4th one that actually took control through allegiance. Took control. Once I build out more allegiance, I can take control of another army. And I've conquered the territory over here to the Dark Fortress in the Wolflands. And now Greasus shows up with a powerful army, and I can just finish him off. And I'm pretty sure you can also use, if I can get this guy should have Immortal. So if I wound him in battle and then return this army to Grimgor, I can get I can get a hero over there. So let Grimgor be Grimgor. Let him conquer the Mountains of Morn, and let him conquer the West. You can also make deals with Clan Ferric over here, though they do have 2 Dark Fortresses, so you might actually want to declare war on them to gain those. But it depends on what else you're going to do in your campaign. Here are your options. Once you get Grimgor, like, with Grimgor, just declare war on the ogre factions one after another, let him defeat them, let him take their territory. He'll eventually end up fighting Greasus. He'll eventually end up winning against Greasus in a campaign. Like, especially here, if I eliminate Greasus' army here, Greasus will have literally nothing left. But what do you do with Kholek? Well, you should take the Valerie. Then it's up to you what you want to do in your campaign. You can head east. You can take the Fortress of Ice, the Bloodwind Keep, and then vassalize Village. It does mean you'll lose out on a Dark Fortress, or you can play with a mod that gives you defeat a Legendary Lord, so you could get Village yourself if you're playing with that mod, and get this Dark Fortress up for yourself. But just remember, the more vassals you have, the stronger Kholek becomes in battles. So that's one option. Head to the east, as I have in this campaign. Take the Great Bastion, take the capital of Cathay, then move on to deal with Nangao and Changyang, so northern and western provinces. I've also made an alliance with Snitch in this particular campaign, because he will like you. A lot of factions will actually like you. Like the evil factions will actually like you. I could make a deal with Clan Rictus if I wanted to, but it's stretch. I'm not particularly interested in that situation. But this is a campaign where we really benefit from declaring war on factions that you never send an army against, because your vassals are going to do so. Like, for instance, there's this army of Greases heading here, but then there's an army of my Ogre Kingdom's vassal coming in here to take Bloodspeak, and which can help them because they only have one territory. But Grimgor, if you allow Grimgor as a vassal to become incredibly powerful, he will really help you out during the course of a campaign. It's also kind of funny that they're getting like Chaos Warriors from me, basically, because they're my vassal. But yeah, significantly beneficial. So that's the Eastern plan. Take Cathay. But eventually, when you stop having territory to conquer over here, there's not gonna be an unlimited number of Chaos Fortresses in Cathay itself. There's Xiangyang, there's Zhangao, there's Weijin. But once you do that, you're gonna reach a cap. Another campaign plan that you could have is just let Village end up fighting Cathay. He won't win. He won't become a mega threat, and he's also unlikely to declare war on you. And instead, head over to the west, where there's a vast number of chaos, dark fortresses that you can capture to increase the strength of your empire in North Scotland, while vassalizing the minor factions along the way. Like in this campaign, for instance, I actually forced the vassalization on Archeon, which is a bit hilarious. Like, I didn't have to face his main army, which is over here. I can't select it. Well, probably because of Fog of War, isn't it? There we go. Can't select it still. Yeah, the Fog of War mod can bug out. But Archeon's army is stationed over here. I didn't have to face it in battle because he left his Dark Fortress undefended. He only had that one territory. I just swooped in with this army, took some damage taking it, but took his Dark Fortress and forced vassalization on him. Now I'm moving against Boris Ursus. And with Boris Ursus, I just take this Dark Fortress, then I take his capital. If Boris manages to take some territory himself, if he can survive against Archeon for a while, I can then force vassalization on Boris. Then I can move on Demon Prince further west. But regardless of what you choose, Western or Eastern plan, you're still going to end up in the West eventually. Going with the Eastern plan means you're going to do it slower. You could also, if you want to really push things to the limit, though you do want to keep capturing Dark Fortresses. That's, I'd say, the key for any Chaos Warrior campaign, because that's going to improve your economy, that's going to allow you to have more armies. But you could also decide to take a trip via the sea, playing as Kholek, and then show up in Lustria, and then conquer Lustria. You're more powerful than the Lizardmen, flat out more powerful than the Lizardmen, flat more powerful than the Hunts Marshal or Rakarth. Though Rakarth is actually going to present the biggest challenge. But you do have multiple options. You could conquer the Empire if you so desire. Go for the Imperial territory, like if you're going west. Eventually, like, stop around here, and then start heading south, capturing Dark Fortresses along the way, the ones in Norska as well. And then eventually march into the Empire and take all of it. But let's talk about victory conditions, though. You do need to eliminate the Imperial Wardens and the Northern Provinces. And they tend to have... Well, the Imperial Wardens will be dealt with one way or another. Either they'll automatically get destroyed or they'll get confederated. Miao Ying, however, has a significant amount of survivability. So if you want the short campaign victory benefit, then you're going to have to go there yourself. And you're likely going to have to go there with your main army. In terms of the long campaign victory condition, you do need to capture 13 of these settlements. I have a number of them, but certainly nowhere near 13. But many of them in the cast territories. And that's going to grant you the long campaign victory condition, which gives you Lord Recruit rank plus 10 in all provinces. I would say the short campaign victory condition is not necessarily that important. I mean, it is good, don't get me wrong, having this Winds of Magic, but it's not crucial that you get it as quickly as possible. The long campaign, I would argue, is more important. With Kholek, yeah, get monstrous units. One thing to mention about this entire area of the map that you're in is that there tend to be a lot of trolls available for recruitment, and you will have a Dragon Ogre benefit playing as Kholek, so you can really make the monstrous armies work very well. In particular, cast trolls, the armored version, which is very easy to get. So for instance, let's say you have a regular troll, we go into warband upgrades, you only need a rank 3 from a regular troll to make it an armored cast troll. But cast trolls armored are incredibly effective units. They have high armor, though they don't have high leadership. But this army tends to do very, very well in terms of out-resolve potential. And that's all there is to say. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.